Right.
I was going to make a comment, but I don't want the people to know.
The people, yeah.
Yeah, I
You're
gotta
now.
hide. I want to hide the business from
Uh,
the people.
let's hide the biz. Let's hide the biz. Hey, people.
We were talking about embezzling, and we were gonna make it. I mean, what?
Yeah, we were talking about like taking all the money that we get and running because we get a
So
lot of
I
money.
saw what was that movie? Office Space, and you know how they have like the virus that takes out a penny every time they make a transaction.
Yeah, and then he
I
fudges the
was
number and it gets huge.
I was thinking we do that, except with a bigger corporation and with a gun.
Hmm.
So like, hear me out.
Okay.
We go into a bank, right? We rob it, but we only get a penny. Because if we ask for a penny, they'll be like, "Well, there's no point in calling the police. It's only a penny." And we do that enough and go to enough places, we could probably save up.
So we just keep doing this for a while and it adds up.
Yeah, over time.
Oh, we'll just have to rob 1,000 banks to get $10. That's all. No
Yeah,
problem. No problem. We got this.
but they won't care. So we could just walk to the bank next door and point a gun at them and say, "Give me a penny."
Okay. I suppose we could do that. Hi,
We'll
Poe.
shoot
How's
you.
it going?
Hey, Poe. But yeah, I think it's a good plan.
I think
And
you're
if we do that,
insane.
what's insane about my plan?
Uh, well, I don't know.
They call you don't even know. Well, then you don't know what you're talking about.
I mean,
You know,
can't you just ask for a penny instead of having to do the gun thing?
they called Nintendo insane when they made the Wii, and people are like, "Motion controls. No one will ever buy that."
Wow. We're not gonna rob banks, guys. We're just gonna do podcasts because honestly, when
I
you're
could take hobbies on my own, but whatever.
that'll be like your weekend gig. What do you do on the weekends? I rob banks for pennies.
Yeah, a penny, but anyway. Episode topics. We're gonna talk about things.
Oh, okay. Now you want me to do the intro. Okay, I gotcha. This is the reset button for June 6th, 2017. I am so sorry. You poor people.
I'm not.
Of course you're not. Of course you're not. You're the guy that's talking about robbing banks for a penny. Because,
I am
they,
one of your hosts,
yeah.
Eric Rogers.
Yep, you are the co-host, Eric, the robber who goes for like pennies at the bank. You'd
This
be the
won't work.
kind of guy that like at the beginning of the Dark Knight, while they're like robbing the bank and they like hit the vault, instead of like being the guy that like has an entire school bus full of money bags, you just have like I don't know a fucking micro machine with a penny stuck in the front.
Look, I'm just saying, and I'll say this right now, that the more you talk about it, the more likely I'm going to be arrested. So I'm trying to move us on back to video games because this is you clearly were not able to handle the responsibility.
I'm not gonna dispute that. That is a heavy burden to have, to know that like a plan of pure genius has been dropped in your lap. What do you
And yet
do
you
with it?
keep talking about it. Isn't like that's not the strategy you should
Well,
join
what do you
me.
do at that point? Do you cradle it like a newborn? Do
So
you let it go?
I'm playing Metroid Prime, and it's a good game. See how I'm trying to get you off the topic?
Okay, we don't want you to get arrested. Before you talk about Metroid Prime, though, I'm not going to let you off that easy. Since you brought up crazy stuff, I'm going to ask you something crazy.
Oh,
See, I saw this today, actually. So, right before we got on, I was just scrolling through Twitter, and then I think it was Polygon that pops up with this crazy story. There might be
well,
bunny people in Final Fantasy 14.
I know what they're saying, but that's very there are a lot of questions going on right now. I can explain this.
So what's going on with the bunny people?
You ever play Final Fantasy 12 or Tactics?
It's been a while in both.
Remember how Final Fantasy 12 had a bunny girl in it?
For like a brief moment, right?
Oh, she was a party member.
Oh, no, I don't remember it then.
Okay. So basically, in the world, I want to say it's Vana'diel. No, that's Final Fantasy 11. It's going to bug me. Hold on. What is the name of the world of Tactics? It is on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, we're going back there for a future raid. And people are wondering, how is that going to work? The director of Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy 12 is going to actually direct that 24-man raid, which is very exciting. Ivalice. So we're going back to Ivalice is like one of the things they're pushing in the new expansion, but it'll be in a future patch. But, the bunny girls are in Ivalice. Therefore, if you're in Ivalice, you're going to see characters and races from Ivalice, thus bunny girls.
Okay.
It's not really as confusing. What is more confusing right now is how are we going to Ivalice? People have different theories. Are they going to be like, here's a part of the world where Ivalice is? What? This took place in the same world as Ivalice? Or is it that they're going to do the multiverse thing and be like, you're in a different video game franchise? Isn't that crazy? So we don't know the specifics because nothing's been done like this in the game yet. But there has been a multiverse that exists within the game and as part of its story. So it is very possible we jump through that. But at the same time, the very first 24-man raid was a remake of the final 3 dungeons from Final Fantasy 3. But it was done within the world of 14, and it was recontextualized. So I don't know. It very well could be that it actually takes place within the world. Or that this world this whole time was connected. There are a million questions I have. I don't have any answers.
Nor do I, because I had no idea that there was a real possibility of bunny people coming.
From Final Fantasy 12, yeah.
Do you want bunny people?
I just want to know how this is going to work. Like, I get that the 24-man... My understanding, and I could be very wrong, is that the 24-man raids from now on will have guest directors. So, like, this expansion is the director of Final Fantasy Tactics. And the next expansion could be, I don't know, Yoko Taro from Nier. And they just keep bringing in guests who do these 24-man raids. Which, if so, would work because of the multiverse stuff that they've thrown in. But I'm also hearing word on the street that may not be the case, and this is still, like, being adapted within the world that Eorzea takes place in. So I don't know. I just don't know how I feel about any of it. But I'm okay in either case. If Ivalice turns out to be part of the same planet, that would be a bombshell. That would be one of the biggest twists in video game history. Right. Imagine if you were playing World of Warcraft and then the next expansion comes out and says, and we're off to visit Master Chief.
That would be kind of weird.
It would be. That's kind of how I feel about this whole situation. Because I've gotten to know this world really well, and I only know the one continent, but we'll see. It ain't in the lore book. None of this is in there.
Oh, even better. Like, with World of Warcraft, that they were suddenly like, oh, here come the Zerg. It's time for StarCraft, not Warcraft. That would be odd. It
would be kind of feeling like that.
Yeah.
How it was, we really don't know any details, because when Stormblood was announced, there was just a slide, and it just said, return to Ivalice. And that they were going to have the guest director on. And there were some hints towards this, because Palace of the Dead is a dungeon that you can do in that game. It's kind of like a randomly generated one. And it's fun.
Right.
But it's a tribute to Tactics Ogre, which is, again, the Final Fantasy Tactics guy. So, I don't know. It could be either way. If they do the multiverse stuff, then that will mean they really have endless possibilities going forward. But on the other hand, wouldn't it be insane if I found out that Final Fantasy 12 takes place in the same place as my MMO that I've put in years of gaming. I don't know.
It's also interesting whenever something like that is possibly being introduced because you don't know how it's going to go. Specifically, like, for example, World of Warcraft has been waiting for Tuskars. I don't know if you've ran into those guys at any point while playing, but they're a walrus race. And for a long time, everybody thought the Tuskars were coming because they have their own mailboxes and everything else. And here we are 7 years later, we have no damn Tuskars. So we're still waiting. We're still waiting for walrus people.
I don't remember that from Warcraft 3, which is as much as I know about Warcraft.
I don't remember Tuskars being anywhere around that either, but they're in World of Warcraft, so I don't know. We want our walrus people. We don't get them.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
I'm excited to see what it is. It will not be like it's probably going to be 4.1. It'll probably be like the big patch after the expansion. Will be when we get to start the 24-man raids.
Mm-hmm.
Those are usually the most fun part of the game for me. I still love the original 3 that came with 2.0. That era. Like World of Darkness, which was like the final one before we got to Heavensward, is legitimately one of the most fun things I've ever done in a MMO. It is so fun. So I'm hoping it lives up to tactics and all that, and has bunny girls, because that's all anyone remembers about Final Fantasy 12. Apparently,
why not? I mean, there's already cat girls in the game, so it would work.
There are cat girls.
Cat girls.
I mean, they're technical. I mean, if you go to the Golden Saucer, they're Playboy bunnies, pretty much.
Yeah, I've been there.
I
went there simply to hear the music, to see how authentic it was compared to 7, and I was very pleased.
It's a charming place.
It is. Post says Pepsi Man is a special guest for Final Fantasy XIV, since he is an iconic figure in Japan. Yeah!
You know, I wouldn't put anything past it, because we've had cross-promotions with things that have no right to be cross-promotions. Yokai Watch was a cross-promotion in Final Fantasy XIV. So there was a quest at one point where you got to hang out with the ghost from Yokai Watch.
Now that's interesting. I wasn't aware of that.
Some people have mounts from that quest, because there was such a long thing you could do, and the mount is the ghost. So I can still see Yokai Watch stuff that people have gotten from like a year ago.
That is really, really crazy. I had no idea that was a thing.
14 podcast where we talk about Final Fantasy 14 every week.
Every single week. No, we're gonna talk about something else here. Don't worry, guys. It's not gonna be Final Fantasy all the time, but it is gonna it's gonna kind of be like what we were talking about last week as well, because we picked on Microsoft. Here's another opportunity to pick on Microsoft, so let's have at it. You had told me about an executive at Sony seeing Nintendo as a companion, and with the quote, you saw it as a freeze out to Microsoft.
Well, you read it very differently than I did.
Yes,
I did. I'm going to have their exact words. Sean Layden called the Switch a great success and says it's definitely what the fan base has been waiting for. He sees the system as less of a rival and more of a complementary traveler, claiming the Switch sales have no bad impact for the sale through the PS4. He sees the two consoles being side by side, which is kind of beautiful. It's also, it's throwing shade at Microsoft, because he's like, Nintendo and I are best buddies. We're all you need. Everyone should buy the Switch. I don't even view the Switch as competition, but no mention to Microsoft whatsoever. And I love that. I love that Sony looks at Nintendo as a friend. It's such a weird time we live in, where that has ever happened.
It's also interesting because did you read any of the comments in that thread?
Mostly people agreeing with me is what I saw.
Usually
although you had your own take on it.
Well, usually when it comes to NeoGAF, if you mention like anything outside of Sony, I hear that they get a little angry, just a little rabid. But with this, the idea is Sony and Nintendo are companions, and everybody was like, "Yeah, most places are."
Everyone's loving the Switch, though. I mean, like, I don't know. It seems like Microsoft has just been a console that hasn't been going after the hardcore gamer lately. And we've talked about that and ran it up and down, and Scorpio can change my mind, probably won't. But Nintendo really has gotten it. Like, it hurts me that I do not have a Switch. It is that good. Right now, they have that figured out already more than the Wii U ever was.
That's true.
It's just from a gamer standpoint, it's how I used to view it, but now kind of proven throughout a lot of people, including Sony, which is Nintendo is usually not your main console. Nintendo makes the console that is weird and unique in Nintendo. And then you get a Sony console or a Microsoft console as your it'll play most things console.
Right. Like, I think it's fair to say it's been that way for well over a decade at this point. I think that trend started with the GameCube, where like everybody loved a GameCube. They had a GameCube, but they also had either a PS2 or an Xbox.
Like GameCube had power, as opposed to the Wii, which is really where I felt that the most. Because I remember people looked at the Wii and they were like, they'll never replace a PS3 or an Xbox 360.
No.
But look at those motion controls. Aren't they weird? This is a charming little thing. I want to play that Wii Sport. And that's why most people had a Wii. It was just because it was this other console. And weirdly, it didn't get used that much. You mainly play Nintendo games or the occasional hardcore game that was thrown at you. But you wouldn't have played it like your Xbox 360 where you're online all the time.
Right. Yeah. The issue I had when it came to that part with Wii, and I had this issue with GameCube as well, because I loved GameCube. Loved the hell out of it. But the issue I had with Wii and Wii U and everything, just like the previous ones, you always felt isolated. At least I always felt isolated when playing it. Simply because you could go online for the games, sure, okay, whatever. But you couldn't, interact with people really. You couldn't talk to anybody. It was just like your own little island that you had to sit on. Didn't really care for that.
This is not an insult in any way, but until the Switch, and I'm going to throw Wii U and the Wii under this, they were always a console behind. Because when we got the Wii, graphically everything felt like it was no better than the GameCube. You could play GameCube games, but it was just unless you were looking at Galaxy, or like a first-party Nintendo game, generally the graphics were pretty bad, because people made a lot of trash for it. You look at the Wii U, and it made some pretty games, but it always felt like it could never play the new game coming out.
Right, and for the most part, you're right, it couldn't.
And Switch you can totally include in this, but there's something so unique about the Switch and the fact that it's portable that I think is that people are willing to overlook that now. Because they're saying, oh, it's a portable device, though. So this is the sequel to the 3DS. And in that sense, I'm okay. I don't need every game to be a PS4 game. I'm not looking at this as a replacement for my PS4. And I think the best thing that happened to the Switch is that it came out when it did, which is in between console cycles.
Yeah, it's helping.
Because right now, it really doesn't have competition. Because everyone pretty much already has their basic needs covered. You have a PS4, you have an Xbox One by now. It's very unlikely that you just have a PS3. And if you want like a PS4, it's super cheap to get now. I mean, you can get one for like $250.
Yeah, you can get PS4. You could build PC if you want to be a PC gamer. And people even mention in the comments section of that thread, even if you're a PC gamer, all right, fine, the Switch is still for you because you could take it on the go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More than that, isn't there a way to connect the Switch with your PC? I heard there was some program or something that's coming out where you can stream games on your PC to your Switch.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Well, apparently that's in the works.
Oh, I haven't heard anything like that, but if there's something in the works that's doing that, bring it on, man. That sounds great.
Think of it kind of like how the Vita handled its console with streaming, except now with your entire PC library.
And there you go. That's where I'm going to bring in my opinion on how this went. Thank you for saying the magic word.
I helped you. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, yeah, the way I saw it with everything he was saying there, it's great that Sony and Nintendo are wanting to be best buds and everything. That's great, first and foremost. But the way I saw it was, yeah, look at the Switch. It's doing so great when it comes to mobile. You could take this thing anywhere you want to. It's great, right? Fuck the Vita. Don't remember that thing. It was a failure.
I'm not going to tell you.
That's the way I felt about that.
I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I am going to say I don't think that was the intention. Because I think Sony has forgotten that the Vita exists.
I have no too.
They haven't mentioned the Vita in a very long time. And I think the very worst thing they could do is if we get to E3 and they're like, we announced the new handheld from Sony. I don't care what it is. I'm out.
That would be such a disaster at this point. It wasn't last year, but it was the year before that when I was still writing Screw Attack News, because the very next morning for Screw Attack News, I wrote a thing about how the Vita is dead. The Vita's officially dead, I think is what I put as the headline, because I wrote and mentioned the only company to mention the Vita that night was Square Enix. It was mentioned one fucking time, the entire night, and it wasn't even done by Sony. So the next morning I wrote and said the Vita is dead.
I'm going to argue that. There was a game released for the Vita last month that was made by Atlas, the Caligula Effect. It's still getting releases at the store. Like it's you say dead, but it's not like the Wii U where there is literally nothing coming out for it. It's just that they don't care anymore. What you're in now is what the GameCube was in before the Wii came out, which is there's still games coming out, but Nintendo doesn't really care about it. You'll get your occasional card battle RPG, but
yeah, I know that there are still games, and games are probably still going to keep coming out. But the thing is, Sony is not going to do anything. Like, if it needs, like, say for whatever reason it needs a major software update, I'm sure it'll show up eventually. They're not going to rush to put it out. They don't really want to acknowledge that it's a thing anymore.
You know, speaking of discontinuing, they discontinued the PS3 in Japan after all these years. And you've made me realize something that I'm actually very concerned about. Just with those words. So what happens to the online when they've officially given up on the Vita? And what I mean by that is, like, you know, these are digital devices that live or die by their library.
Mm-hmm.
Will they turn off the servers? Are we just going to lose everything?
I would hope not, but if history has shown exactly what's going to happen with that, I would say yes.
What's happened with the Wii?
Right, exactly what happened there.
No, I mean, actually, what has happened?
Oh, you don't know what happened with it?
I need a reminder.
In terms of, like, support for the games you've already purchased, I think there's still support for that. But if you want to do, like, any type of online play, that is gone. Completely gone.
See, that's fine. I just want to make sure those games are still accessible. Like, if you can still get them. Like, that is what matters. Because we can store these games, or they usually get remastered, or there's usually some form of piracy. Because the real heroes in the world are pirates. And I say that without joke. Without comedy, because, like, they are the ones that are backing up and archiving all these games. But what I worry about is people who have bought their thing just can't access it anymore after a time limit's up.
Right. And it's interesting that you mentioned that pirates are the people who are going to rescue everything, because there was a certain issue with disc-based games that I was not aware of until I watched an episode of Metal Jesus. Have you heard of the term disc rot?
Yeah.
I have not until I watched that. And that's
when
you
backed
I was
up
like,
your ISO.
Yeah, that's why I was watching that and thinking, oh wow, that really could be an issue for certain things. Like, I don't know if like majority of the Sega Dreamcast collection is available at like on various online outlets, but that's a problem because if disc rot starts hitting these games, then certain games that were Dreamcast only may disappear into the void if we don't do something to preserve them.
I would say usually with archival purposes, it takes about 2 generations before they all end up online, but then they get there. People are pretty good about that. The problem we run in now, more than the actual game and backing those up, are the patches. This is what has me more concerned, because most games nowadays do not come released. They come with part of the file, and then you're downloading the real file online to fix it.
Right.
Like most obvious and horrific example being the latest Tony Hawk Pro Skater, which only had the first area of the game. You had to download a patch which had the rest of the game on it.
Only, say, 20% of the game was on the disc?
Not 20%. I'm telling you that, like, less. Like, only one stage. One
stage.
area.
So I was being generous. Let's say 10%.
Sure.
Jesus.
It was a 2 gig on the disc. I think it was an 8 gig download. You can do the math from there.
Wow.
But I mean, that game is not necessarily known historically as a good game. So, there's a lot you can harp on it. But that's probably one of the least things.
Poe is trolling us hard in the comments. He said Reset Press promotes piracy robbing banks.
No!
No, we're ruined!
Poe, you gotta keep your mouth shut. I don't want to be found out for my bank robbing. And my piracy.
No, I don't in any way. Neither one of us promotes piracy. In terms
I'm
of
not promoting piracy. I'm promoting archival.
Yes.
Which is something very different.
Yes. Archiving is going to be extremely important as time goes on, because we're finding out that these... I've heard that NES cartridges and Atari cartridges could become obsolete and not work in the future. I don't know how much truth there is to that. We'll see. But I know 100% when it comes to like games for Atari Jaguar, PlayStation, Dreamcast, all these games are at the age where disc rot is a very real possibility for these things happening. So if these discs start decaying and it stops working correctly, we need some way to archive the software, and we can't rely on individual companies to do that because they may not give a damn.
There's a term that I use a lot when we're talking about games in this position, and it is why I'm not very concerned. The term is abandonware. People, abandonware is software that is not being sold, that nobody seems to care about, that is after a certain point, and it's just... once it becomes abandonware, it can just be used legally, and it is not piracy anymore once you download it. So, like, theoretically, you can just download it. There's no way to buy it. Now, I got to counter and say if they ever make an official new release of it, yeah, you're a pirate if you go after the older version. If I go and pirate Wind Waker, that's piracy because there's a new Wind Waker I can get right now.
Yeah, you should absolutely support the new one.
Yeah, but if I feel like playing Turok Evolution on the GameCube, nobody cares.
Yeah, you can't find that. I'll give an even better one since Sierra's dead now. I don't even know who owns the rights to that shit anymore. Tribes.
Tribes,
as far as I'm aware, is abandonware at this point.
It is and it isn't. You can get that on Good Old Games. So
GOG. Okay.
GOG is really solved and ruined depending on who you talk to because now you have to buy it. Oh no. But they have really helped with this problem because they kind of exist as a big factor. And hey, here's a lot of games that we will just fix and sell and give to the consumer.
Right. GOG is really good for that very reason.
Oh, they're great. They also happen to be owned by the guys who made Witcher 3. So, good vibes all around.
Yeah, I really like what they do in terms of it because in terms of issues with the games, like you were saying, a lot of this shit's broken. A lot of it doesn't work. It's not really optimized for use with PC. It just out of the box is a shit festival. These guys fix it and make it playable. And if for whatever reason it doesn't work with your system, full fucking refund.
Every time. I've never had a problem with them.
So yeah.
But, you know, they also, I'd say the most important thing is that they sell games that you would otherwise not be able to get anywhere else. And Steam, when you get an old game, sometimes, in fact, most of the time, I'd say they do not do anything to help you out.
No, I have portions of like the old Doom collection. Half the games don't work, and
You have to do the work yourself.
yeah, I've reached out to them a few times to get help, and they don't really give an answer. So I'm like, well, can I have a refund then? Since they changed the refund policy. But no, I've owned it too long before that policy, and they turned me down. So I've bought and broken shit. So that's the part where I would say Steam versus GOG. If you're talking about older games, GOG does it better. That's just the way it is.
I mean, in any world where I can go and buy a copy of Toonstruck again is a better world, because I should not be able to find that as easily as I can right now, and it is surreal that I can. Are you familiar with Toonstruck, by the way?
I have not.
It was a full motion video point-and-click adventure game where you played as the actor who played Doc Brown in Back to the Future.
Really?
It was made by Virgin. Unfortunately, it ended on a cliffhanger and it never got a sequel. We'll never get that sequel.
So you play as Christopher Lloyd?
You play as Christopher Lloyd, and he's live action, but he's in a world of tunes. Think of like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, except it was kind of M-rated. So like the humor in it would go way farther in the darker, weirder way.
That's really interesting.
It's a very interesting game. The biggest problem it had, again, was that it didn't get an ending. And the reason is that they actually cut the game in half, and they were going to release Toonstruck 2 because everything was already made and filmed for it, but the game sold so little that it never got released. So half the game is just missing. So the game kind of ends on a, man, things are going bad. You never get conclusion. And I think
so crazy.
I think at this point now we're not going to get it. There was a time I remember some people were working with the old assets and they're like, we're going to get it. We're going to remake it from scratch. We got some of these assets. We're going to do it. Nothing came of it.
Yeah, I'm with Poe on this one. How have I never heard of this? It makes sense that it would be Christopher Lloyd simply because he played Judge Doom in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
That's true. The game is called Toonstruck. It is available on Good Old Games. You can find clips of it on YouTube. I know my point-and-click adventure games. It was a weird one. I was not old enough to play it, but I did play it, and woo, I'm screwed up for life.
You naughty boy.
Yeah. What was that?
Naughty. Terrible.
Oh, I thought you were saying that's how I got to where I am.
No, well, that probably is. It probably is how you got where you are. I mean, you're playing M-rated games with Christopher Lloyd. You probably didn't even tell your mother, did you?
It had a rating at the time.
Oh.
It's available for $10.
Oh.
1996. So I compare that to the ESRB. But for some reason, I don't think it had a rating. I could be dead wrong on that.
In 96, it absolutely would have.
It has a rating. It was rated T for teen.
Oh.
Let me do it. Okay. Well, then why do I remember it being so much darker than it was? It doesn't matter. Whatever.
Your memory's all messed up. You're a clone. That's what it is.
Well, here's something I do remember. The friend you had traveling with you, because there's always a companion in a point-and-click adventure game, was actually voiced by the voice actor who does Homer Simpson. So
now that it keeps getting weirder and weirder.
It's Tim Curry was the villain in it, and it had some voice actors from the Animaniacs also in it.
Now I don't believe you. Now you're going way.
Ben Stein was also in it.
What? No.
You look it up. I'm looking at the picture of Ben Stein, and this stuff was coming to me as I remember it. Now, Tim Curry
can't be.
Yeah.
I refuse to believe this exists. Even if I'm looking at it, I don't care if I'm holding a copy of it in my hand.
You want to play it together and do a let's play of Toonstruck?
I do, because I think by the end of it, I'm going to be like carving signs into my flesh.
I might do a Let's Play of Toonstruck. That would be nostalgic for me.
That's just like, oh my god, that's no, no.
If I have permission on the channel, I'm going to make a Let's Play, and I'm going to put it on this thing. If you guys donate to our Patreon, you're going to get a Let's Play of Toonstruck.
Permission. You stream whatever the hell you want.
Okay.
That's what you do. You stream whatever, unless it's like, shit that'll get us banned. Don't do that. But
no promise.
We're already working toward that, talking about robbing banks for pennies.
You're talking about robbing banks. I don't know.
For pennies.
I'm not even part of it.
Okay. We'll get back to the thing you originally wanted to talk about at the very beginning, but that I shot you off toward bunny people. Metroid Prime.
Oh, don't worry. There's barely any time. So I've been replaying Metroid Prime, and I have some controversial thoughts about it.
Uh-oh.
It's nothing really uh-oh. I think it is the best Metroid game. I like it more than Super Metroid. And here's my reason. Super Metroid is a flawless game. I am not knocking Super Metroid. But if the core of Metroid is to feel lost in an environment and a sense of discovery, I cannot think of a game that does it better than Metroid Prime. Like, I haven't played this game in many, many years. And at every point, I feel like I really could just go anywhere. I could go to the wrong place.
Yeah.
Where am I going? And I don't know. That feeling feels really good. And I don't know another game that does it as well. Because there's a million Metroidvania games that exist. But they always have some marker telling you where you're supposed to be. Super Metroid also had that marker, kind of giving you the eyes. Now, Metroid Prime has a little hint system, but it's so vague because of the 3D map that you really have no idea how you're supposed to get to any of these spots.
Right.
Plus, you can turn it off, which is something you can't do with the other ones. And I feel like that core makes it a better game. I feel like that makes it the pinnacle of what Metroid is to me. So, I don't know. I wanted to...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's also interesting because you were saying that with Metroid Prime, you could pretty much go wherever you wanted at any point, which isn't exactly always true with, say, the first Metroid and Super Metroid, because, there were certain things you had to pick up. I countered when we had this discussion, because we had this discussion over breakfast, guys, and I was like, well, you can't go through the lava level without the suit, and you were like, I did. And that just blew my mind. Younger.
Now, to be fair, you get to the other end, and then I'm missing items that I need to progress, but I could still do it. It's not that it's not set up in a way that's familiar. I mean, there are doors that need, to be shot with a missile before you open it.
Mm-hmm.
But there are whole sections of the environment that are just not necessary for you to go to, that you can just go to, like, way too early, and just be there. And I don't feel like the other ones really let you do that in the same way. The only other game I could think of that does that was Symphony of the Night, because that was a game that was kind of open the whole time, and you really could just go wherever you wanted. Right. But Symphony of the Night also did not do what Metroid does with its item system, where it's about backtracking in the same degree. It was more like, oh, I can't jump up there, so I could fly up there once I get the bat. But it wasn't like, here's a door, it is locked. Here's an area where things are on fire. It was way more contextual, I guess, is more of a point that I'm trying to say with it. And I don't know. It seems like Prime is a game you really could go in as minimal as possible and just get bare necessities and probably beat it without most of the things. Closest game to compare it to, I haven't played it, would probably be the newest Zelda. Because that's a game you could just jump into the final boss.
Yes. Yeah, you can absolutely go straight to the final boss if you want to, though you're likely going to get the hell kicked out of you. Because if you don't have, spoiler alert, if you don't go and do the main quests, then you don't get the support structure that you need, and you have to fight multiple forms of the final boss, and can lose very quickly. But in terms of Metroid Prime, I think you've got a lot of points there. Specifically, it is very contextual. There is a lot of backtracking to it. But also, you can get lost if you want to, but the more you play and the more you learn and understand the environment, the better you can get at it. Versus, like, Metroid, Super Metroid, they were cryptic as fuck. There really isn't any way to get better with those environments because it's not 3D. But versus Prime, go ahead.
I think in Super Metroid you remember the layout.
Yeah.
But in Prime you remember the area.
Yes.
And the 3D really makes that strong. Another comparison I would use would be Ocarina of Time.
Mm-hmm.
Because it also did a 2D to 3D conversion really effectively well. I think history kind of is agreed on that. With Ocarina of Time, dungeons took on a whole new way when you could look up, when you could jump over gaps on the ground and have different layouts for positioning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people complain about the Water Temple, and I get why, because of the boots, right? But when the 3DS version came out, I think we all kind of realized the Water Temple is a really interestingly designed thing. It's not fun, but it's interesting because that was something that really could have never been done on a Super Nintendo.
Right.
Because it involves you looking up, it involves you acknowledging different layers of the same thing with the same viewpoint. And I think that adds a whole massive element to what made that game special.
Yeah, same can be said for Metroid Prime, especially when you consider the Spider Ball, the way that worked.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big thing because, like you were saying, you get used to, like, areas. So you have to go into the snow area, you get the Spider Ball, you backtrack, and you have to start learning how to use that in a 3D environment to solve puzzles and get through various obstacles.
So, why did we get Other M? Why did we get a linear game that, like, had these 2D, 3D elements that seemed to get the worst part of both versions, with a storyline that didn't resonate and a character that didn't feel like the character we had in the previous games, and now the series is on hiatus. Like, I keep looking at it, and I'm like, I understand why people hate it. And I don't even hate it. I'm just confused, like, how we got there. Because even if you go to Metroid Prime 3, it was a more linear game, but it got the core right. Like, it still understood what people liked about Metroid, and it capitalized on that. Samus was never ruined as a character. I don't understand what happened with Other M.
I'm not certain on that one. The only idea I could have with that is they wanted to flesh Samus out a bit more as a character, I suppose, but they didn't do it right. They really
Samus
didn't do it right.
Is weirdly one of the most fleshed out characters that doesn't speak. Because I can describe Samus pre-Other M if you have her backstory in mind, which I'm aware of.
Yeah.
She was raised up, after her parents were murdered by Ripley, given this suit by the chicken people.
The Chozo.
I like calling them chicken people.
Fair enough.
She wanted to join the military, but they wouldn't let her, so she became one of the world's most badass bounty hunters. It's a really simple story, but it just defines who she is. She's just this badass that said, I'll do it myself. And that was her whole shtick. So when you play Metroid Prime, some of the most impressive elements of the game are actually those weird little cutscenes. She's not talking; it's just her movement.
Yep.
And I feel like she gets a lot of characterization for someone that doesn't say anything. Like one of the best scenes. You've beaten Metroid Prime 2, right?
I have not.
So you don't know the ending.
You can go ahead and give it to me. I'm not worried.
Well, it's something I can't describe as well. But basically, the Chozo are around, and they're getting ready to thank her, and she just walks out the door and just gives a quick wave of her hand, just like, whatever, I did this, and goes. It's like she did this incredible accomplishment, but she's just like, just another day, but she does that with her hand. And it's just like, that's Samus. It's just this character who does all these badass fucking things, and it's just like, yep, it's what I do.
Yeah, that's how I'd imagine a character like that should be, but Other M decided that she had to be like some sort of like, I don't know, you could call her whiny in that one, and just like I don't know, just emotionally fucked up is what the way I would describe her in that
I'm
game.
okay with emotionally fucked up if this was the game that took place before the original Metroid.
Yeah, I
Then
can
I'd
agree.
buy it. Then I'd buy it. You're talking about before she becomes this legendary badass? But here's what's horrendous, right? Other M is not a game that just takes place after Metroid 1. It doesn't take place just after the Prime trilogy. It doesn't take place... It takes place also after Super Metroid. So, like, that is 5 major events of badassdom that we know about, because she was already this major figure before Metroid 1 even kicked in.
Yeah, and now
I
she's
don't
just...
buy it.
Yeah, now
And
she's just this whiny woman. That's what she needs to be.
I mean, I understood the relationship. You know, if you play Fusion, Adam is actually referenced. But Adam was just treated more like this dick that didn't let her join the military, and that was it. That was it. It was like, you know, I named my shit Adam because it was fitting. And that was like the plot of Fusion when you talked about the relationship with Adam. So, I don't know. I guess my original point has been far off, but like I'm looking at Metroid Prime and I'm becoming more and more frustrated with the way the series went. Because
Right.
it only took one bad game. And it took one game that they were so proud of that they actually have taken out of the canon the original Metroid Prime trilogy.
Right, and not to mention, like people have said, Metroid Prime was just such a great leap for the series because of, you know, the visuals, because of the gameplay, because of the way that the maps played out, the music. They were mentioning that in the chat. The music is amazing, just
It is great.
ungodly amazing. The ambience, ungodly amazing. This is a terrific game, and now we see where we are.
I have one theory why they ruined Metroid. And I'm going to sound very bad for it, but hear me out.
Everybody loves your crazy theories. Let's have it.
So, as we know, Nintendo used to hate Donkey Kong Country because it was better than anything Nintendo
Oh
could have
God,
made.
you're bringing this up again.
Well, it's news to them.
Okay, go ahead.
I think even though Retro is now part of Nintendo, or even was Nintendo, they were just so mad that the American studio did it better that they just wanted to throw them away. Why else do you think they made him work on Donkey Kong Country Returns? Because it's fitting. It's like, okay, we always said Donkey Kong Country wasn't a good game. You guys feel like the right people to make it. We'll take Metroid off your hands. Give it to Team Ninja. They're more talented. They know what to do.
Oh, tell them the last part of your theory with Metroid Prime and how that went.
Which part of my theory? You're gonna have to give me a reminder.
You've forgotten it, so I'll fill it in for you since someone already mentioned it in the comments. So Nintendo, you know, heard everybody yelling at "We want Metroid back." So what they did is they put out a fun little game called Metroid Prime Federation Force.
Oh, that's not a theory. That happened.
Well, your theory is Nintendo did that to troll them and be like, "Oh, you didn't buy this game? Guess you don't like Metroid, huh?" And then that was the end of it.
Not a theory. That happened. We saw it happen. I think the only reason that they may still make another Metroid is because so many people are yelling at Reggie. It's like Reggie hears them. But at the same time, Reggie's this fucker that has been playing with my heart for Mother 3 for like a decade, so I don't care anymore. That man knows how to troll.
Wolf is yelling that Federation Force didn't happen. Oh, but it did.
It happened, whether you wanted it to or not.
It's like
that
bad dream in Nightmare on Elm Street. You wake up and the glove's still there. Oh, it fucking happens.
You know, the worst thing is, I looked into the development of Federation Force. Apparently, when it was being made, it was not originally going to be a Metroid game.
Oh, imagine that.
They branded it against the will of the creator and said it won't sell. Let's make it the new Metroid Prime game. I want to point that out. It is Metroid Prime is written on that box.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just Federation Force. We had to add that extra word to let them know that this is the continuity that you need it to be.
Yeah,
Part
they
of me
tried
look.
to add in gameplay elements from Prime, right?
I think what they wanted to do is that if they add in the name Prime, then what'll happen is that game will fail and be like, well, it wasn't because it was a different subset. People wanted the Japanese Metroid, as we can clearly see. They'll give it another shot. Although this time, instead of giving it to Team Ninja, they'll give it to I don't know who makes bad Japanese games. Give me a company.
Bad Japanese games.
Yeah,
Concept USA.
give it a Concept.
There we go.
Although
Inafune, here's another chance. Here's another chance to ruin everyone.
you know what the worst part about it is? Concept doesn't actually develop games. They
No.
just look into them. All they do is pitch ideas, which explains a lot.
Concept is such a sham, but I think we're getting off track with that.
Okay, well, getting back on track, did you know that Recore was directed by the director of Metroid Prime?
No.
It's fascinating how that connected.
What the hell happened then?
I don't know. And I think it goes to show that sometimes you can't contribute these things to one guy. The director of Metroid Prime made one of the most generic, terrible fucking Microsoft games imaginable, which is Recore. Which, if anyone tells me isn't, I'll tell you to watch the ending on YouTube and then challenge me after that.
There you have it. So
I'm too
Wow.
familiar with Recore. It is. Ugh.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I think we're probably going to go ahead and wrap it up here. And then next time we have an episode, Nintendo will announce the next edition of Metroid Disappointment Force.
Here's my question to you for how we're doing next week. Now, I know you want to stream E3, of course. My
Yeah.
question is, are we doing an episode next week? Or are we going to give them that and count it?
I think we're probably going to just do E3 coverage, guys, because that's a lot of stuff for us to be doing E3 plus an episode at the same time. So, yeah, you're going to see a lot of us next week, more than an episode of the Reset Button, but we're going to be talking E3. So if you don't like E3...
You'll get our thoughts.
Yeah, so if you're not a big fan of E3, I don't know what to tell you. That's what's going to happen.
So, also, I'm going to warn you all now, when Ubisoft happens, we are going to be drunk.
Yes. Really quick...
I cannot do that sober. Anyway, go on.
Really quick, I was going to bring that up. In terms of it for Patreon, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's donated to our Patreon so far. You can always go to patreon.com/resetpress if you want to continue supporting us. Your support is going to make sure that we are drunk during E3.
That's right.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Seriously, thank you. We're going to need it.
We are going to be very drunk and doing E3 for you guys, so we appreciate the support. It's going to be a lot of fun next week. We hope to see you there. Anything else you got, Eric?
Love you all.
All right, so I'm Patrick. That's Eric. We'll see you next time.
Adios.